Who's got an echo out here? One, probably Brandon, because it wasn't doing it for Ryan.
My echo.
Alright. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the podcast. Today we are here with Bryan FB, the lead designer for Squids from Space. It's a wonderful game you can check out on Steam. How are you doing today, Bryan?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Doing awesome. How about you, Brandon?
Doing good. Doing good. Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep, we
I'm
got
doing
you.
good. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been I just actually playing some Squids from Space earlier today, actually. I played a few more rounds. I gotta stop playing it more, though.
Yeah, earlier today we had one of our weekly community events, and there were some pretty good games.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Brandon does playing more PS4. I'm trying to get him to get on PC more often. But
I would if I had a better PC, but
I'm sorry. Who's the one who said that the PC was better than mine?
drop $1,000 on a computer.
Hey,
Sorry.
listen, it was a good quality computer.
I have to play on minimum graphics on Squids when I try.
Yeah, we're still in early access, so we're still optimizing a lot of the art stuff. We've made some strides in the last couple months, but there's still some work to be done for.
Speaking of that, what do you think about other early access titles?
Well, I mean, I can't. It's hard. If you have any specific game you want to ask about, I can talk about that. But early access in general.
Yeah, early access in general. How do you feel about that? Because a lot of people think it's just a lottery you enter into, for the most part.
Yeah, there's definitely some good and bad. I kind of feel like there's more good, though, because, I mean, obviously I'm coming from it as a developer, and for developers it's awesome because you can sort of crowdfund some of your development by releasing as early access, which is, it's really nice because games these days, they take a lot of time to make. It's hard to just make a really simple game and market it, especially on PC, because there's just so many games on PC these days on Steam. So early access is a nice.
Even on Xbox, there's a lot of game preview games, which is the Xbox version of early access.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of it kind of is good for everyone in some ways. It does. There are definitely some games that release into early access way too soon, and that is definitely a danger. Where people play your game and they're like, "Oh, this game is unfinished or it sucks." They get a negative attitude about the game.
Yeah,
and that could put a damper on how your game can do in the future. You kind of need to shake that negative PR, and that part is potentially risky.
Yeah, I can agree with that definitely. The other thing I should have mentioned earlier is that one of our co-hosts, we had a new one. We were supposed to come on today, however, some things came up during the time zones. He won't be able to show up for this episode, people, but we can hopefully promise he'll be on for the next one. We are sorry for that. It's just going to be you and me here today, Bryan. Me and you and Brandon here.
Sure, no worries.
Forgot about me there.
Well, easy to forget about.
Oh, wow. Bet.
Brandon, why don't you actually introduced me to Squids in Space there. Squids from Space there, Brandon. Why don't you ask some questions for him? Because you would know a lot more about this than I would.
Hey, now.
Well,
I haven't been playing a lot of it because of the whole... I didn't realize that I had to play low graphics until somebody told me.
I mean, when you have a $1,000 computer like me, you can play it without changing the graphics.
You need to calm down there. Alright. Well, ask this one. Is there any sort of ideas or projects you want to use in the future, for the game? You have, for example, Fortnite and Thanos, or...
Thanos is something Squids from Space. That would be
dude, that would be great. What else is there? NBA and Fortnite. Well, really, the only example is Fortnite. They're partnering with everybody now. Companies or studios you want to connect with,
Actually, what about PUBG and Suicide Squad? DC kind of partnered with PUBG there. Now you have skins from Suicide Squad you can use.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're mostly focused on just getting the game finished. because at this point, like, since we're in early access, we haven't done like a really strong community push yet, because we don't want to be putting the game in front of too many people quite yet because it's unfinished.
Yeah.
But once the game releases, hopefully we can do a really big community push, get a lot of people playing the game, and if any partnerships make sense, then that would be super cool. But nothing like that is quite in the cards quite yet, I think. But we have a lot of ideas for places that we want to take the game itself, and like what our vision of it is when it completes early access and becomes an actual fully complete live game.
Yeah.
Can you drop any of those future plans here, or is that top secret? Top secret stuff there.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't exactly call them a secret. It's more that, like, it's always dangerous as a developer to overpromise, because then if something happens in development and you aren't able to achieve the exact vision that you wanted, then everyone's like, oh, you're liars, etc. But yeah, I can talk a little bit about where we want to bring the game. Like, one of the big things that we want to do is more customizations and eventually more weapons and maps and game modes in the game. So like right now, there's 5 maps, there's 3 game modes, there's something like 20 odd weapons, I forget the exact number, and we have like a good amount of customization. So you can make some pretty cool stuff. And those, like the amount of content that we have right now, it already feels like there's quite a lot to do. But, after you play it for a while, you start to, you've seen all the content. So we want to make sure that we keep on releasing stuff that's, just going to keep players engaged, keep giving them new experiences as they continue to play the game, even post-launch.
Yeah.
So, like, one thing that I want to make sure to do is every so often when we do an update, I just want to release a new set of weapons into the game. That you don't have to pay for, because one of the things that we've been trying really hard to make sure that everyone understands about our approach is that we don't want to sell power in the game. A lot of players are concerned about that. So generally, we whenever we expand the game, however we do it, mostly if we do stuff like weapons, it'll almost always, except maybe in some really weird cases where there's like some weird, unique low power weapon or whatever, but for 99% of the weapon and gameplay affecting stuff that we release, it'll definitely be free.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like, one of the big things that games can monetize off of, like, currently, that feels very fair to me, like, as both a developer and a player, is their cosmetics. So a lot of games let you buy super high quality cosmetics or pay for like a suite of cosmetics, and we're kind of potentially looking into how that would work with our like the way that we monetize our game. Nothing's been decided on yet. We're just kind of like keeping all of our options open.
Yeah. Well, one question I was quite curious about when I was looking at the art style of the game was, what was the inspiration behind it? Like, did you have any kind of like how you drew the game or how you designed it? Like, was there any sort of like movies or other games that kind of inspired you in a way to make the theme of it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I certainly wasn't the only person who came up with ideas for the game. The actual seed of the idea for Squids from Space actually existed before I even joined Funbits. It's like 5 or 6 years old or something.
Wow.
Basically, the development team of Funbits, the people who worked on Fat Princess. So I guess let me go back to square one here. Squids from Space was originally conceived as kind of a spiritual successor to Fat Princess, which a lot of our dev team worked on, but we don't own the rights to it. Sony owns the rights to Fat Princess.
Yeah.
So we always wanted to make a second Fat Princess game, and so we had this idea for a game that would be a spiritual successor to it, feel like it, without using the IP. And when we were originally going to make Fat Princess 2, but that ended up not happening, unfortunately. And so we decided to move forward with Squids from Space. And, you know, a lot of Fat Princess influence can be seen in how the basic game works, obviously. You've got the top-down view, you've got fast, like the game is very fast, you've got, you know, you die pretty easily, but you respawn fast. You've got kind of a hat system in the game, except with weapons. You know, that was one of our first design stakes in the ground, where it's like each team, you know, when you die, you drop your weapon, so you can get the weapons from the other team.
Yeah.
The same way that hats worked in Fat Princess. As for kind of the feel of the game in terms of like the genre of it, like the B-movie, 50s Americana, aliens versus humans, I mean, you know, some of the more obvious answers would probably be like, you know, the Mars Attacks games, or not games, movies, or the Destroy All Humans games, stuff like that. You know, all those stuff were all the kind of cheesy B-movie, but with a bit more of a heart to it. Yeah. That was kind of what we were going for, where it's clearly the game world is ridiculous, right? Yeah. But the joke is that no one in the world realizes that. Like, no one ever looks at the camera and winks at you. It's the joke is that people in game don't realize how ridiculous it is.
Exactly. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know why, but like I get a slight vibe of like Invaders from Mars feel. Like, have you seen that movie?
I have not personally seen that movie, but I do know that our studio head, Chris Miller, who is basically responsible for the original direction of the game, like the idea of the aliens versus humans thing, as far as I know, came mostly from him.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's familiar with a lot of stuff in that genre, and used a bunch of that, and a lot of that influenced how he wanted the game to go in terms of like visual style and like the feel of it. But so again, I wasn't around for this, so I've only heard this in stories. But apparently, the original idea for like the Squids as aliens, as like the alien invaders, came from when a small group of Funbits folks, you know, maybe 5 years ago or something, were talking about we're first putting stakes in the ground for this game, like what it would be, what the aliens would look like.
Yeah.
And one of the artists who was in that meeting just like randomly doodled an alien squid inside of a fishbowl, basically.
Yeah. And
everyone loved it. And that was where the idea for the Squids as the aliens came from. And that's why, when you kill a squid, a squid character, their head pops off and they roll around in the bowls. The idea of the squids in bowls predates the idea of squids as like soldiers in suits with guns.
That's really interesting.
And then I guess coming at it from the sorry, Brandon, I think I cut you.
That's fine. Go ahead. I had another question, but you can finish there really quick.
I mean, I'm just talking and trying to keep momentum. So if you guys have questions, definitely feel free to.
I know this wasn't one we talked about, but you got the esports scene. Do you ever see Squids from Space having like a competitive esports type side where you have like different organizations coming in and trying to have like a prize pool, or like Call of Duty esports or Fortnite esports, where people make tournaments and stuff for that? Do you ever see that eventually coming in the future, or do you guys plan on pushing that out eventually? Or
so, as someone who's like big into esports myself, like I love watching. Like I was around, when Husky and everyone started doing the StarCraft 2 podcast way back when. That was kind of like the birth of that sort of stuff in the States. I was around for that and was totally into it. So I would love for Squids to have an esports scene. That would be super cool. And we are definitely planning on pushing out some tools so that people who want to run tournaments can. So like one of the features that we have upcoming is the ability to essentially create a custom game that you can invite specific people to and put like a password on, so that it's more easier. It's more easy. It's easier to just get a game together of your team versus another team of all specific people.
Scrims type things.
Do you think you'll
Yeah, exactly. That said, it's going to be up to the community whether the game has an esports scene or not. We've done what we can to, like, in terms of the design, to allow the game to grow in multiple different directions. So I would call the game pretty solidly mid-core rather than like hardcore or casual, in that I feel like the game is easy to get into. You can just kind of pick it up and play it and have a good time without having to learn a lot of stuff, compared to something like League of Legends, which is a great game, but I think you would call that game hardcore, where if you try to pick it up and play it without understanding some fundamental things about it, you'll kind of get owned.
Yeah. I feel like, and the way that I feel like League of Legends is also advertised that anybody can play it is kind of a false advertising in a way, because a lot of people more the hardcore people seem to only be playing it now. Do you feel like the way like advertising is going for League of Legends, that it's kind of just false in what it's saying?
I mean, I don't really know. Honestly, I haven't really followed their advertising campaign. I haven't really played League in a few years at this point, even though I kind of, watch the LCS from time to time, TSM. But I was okay. Just to defend myself a little bit here, I was totally a TSM fan before it was cool. I'll just put that out there.
Come on. 100 Thieves, man. What are you doing?
So it's hard for me to answer that. I'm not really sure. I do know that Riot has done a lot of work to make the game more welcoming to new players, like in terms of how they introduce people to the concepts of the game, alternate ways to play the game, and some champions that are clearly geared towards newer players. But at the end of the day, the game asks a lot of you in order to be able to play it correctly. So it's cool that it became as huge as it was. Like, back in 2011 or whatever, when right before it started to get really huge, I would never have pegged it as a game that would get so huge, simply because it takes a lot, as a barrier to entry. So, but they've really taken the ball and run with it. Super cool to see that game really launch the esports scene here in North America.
Yeah.
Definitely. League of Legends, I definitely got to play sometime, but I tried it.
Come on, Brandon. Alright, you want me to just ask you another question while you're still trying to think of one, Brandon? Because I think it's time we can bring out this, like, we wanted to start doing like a little.
Don't do it.
We wanted to do like a regular thing on this show. So we were messing around one night, and we came across this thing called the Wu-Tang Clan name generator. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not, but it sounds fairly self-explanatory.
It was this is the thing that got Childish Gambino his rapping name, like Donald Glover. So we wanted to ask you if you would put your name in. You don't have to say your full name on stream, but if you could maybe if I send you the link to the name generator, would you perhaps put your name in and tell us what it would be?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, send me the link.
We wanted to do this like for we wanted to make this like a regular thing for our podcast ever since we came across it, and I think Brandon agrees that it's really fun.
Yes, it is. Speaking of the Wu-Tang Clan name, yeah. I put Logan Paul in last night and Darth Vader. Kid Observer. Logan Paul and Darth Vader are the same person, confirmed. we can't have that.
Those also in chat, actually, if you want to play along, you can go ahead and do the same. I will put the there we go. I'll put it in chat there for you guys.
So from this day forward, you will also be known as. So this is what is on the website. From this day forward, you will also be known as Erratic Watch. I guess that's my Wu-Tang name.
No.
Erratic Watchdog.
Oh no, that's great. That's the greatest name.
I love it. Oh boy, that's awesome. But yeah, there was another thing I've noticed while playing the game is like it's gameplay wise. I feel like it can also be like it's kind of in a way TF2-ish. I find, which I love. I actually am a really big fan of TF2. Did you ever play that game before with it?
Oh yeah. So when TF2 first came out, I was like super excited because I played Quake World TF way back in the day, like in the like around 96, 98. And I was like super into that game in high school. And I never played TFC. Like I tried it a couple times, but it was like, man, this isn't my like Quake Team Fortress. Not to say that TF2 was, but when TF2 came out, I was really excited because it was cool to get another Team Fortress game. There hadn't really been a game quite like it in a long time.
Yeah.
And I played it quite a lot for like the first 6 months that it was out. Like just like I sunk a lot of hours into that game. And that's one reason why when Overwatch came out, I played that a bunch because it has a bit of that TF2 feel. Clearly, there was some inspiration there.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And I would say that those two games were big inspirations for me when it came to how I approached how we want Squids from Space to work. In that those two games, what they're really good at is giving you a sense of identity when you play a character. Like Riot, talking about League of Legends again, Riot designers usually call this like fantasy fulfillment, even though that sounds a little weird.
Yeah. What
they're going for is like you see a character and based on how that character looks, it implies a certain type of approach to the game or type of play style. And then you pick that character up, and it fulfills what you expected them to be. And it's just like really satisfying as a player. And I think Overwatch and TF2 are quite good at that.
Yeah.
And it was something we don't have classes in Squids in Space, obviously.
Not yet.
Well, but that's the thing, right? So in Fat Princess, we had classes with the hats. And I wanted to make each weapon feel like its own class in this game, rather than like weapons being too interchangeable. It's like when you picked up a weapon or when you saw a weapon being used, you had a good sense of identity of what that weapon would do in terms of how it affects your playstyle. So when I try to design a new weapon, like, or my approach to designing weapons for Squids in Space is like, what does this weapon do that is kind of like unique or gives a sense of identity to using it? Like, what is this a weapon that's going to be like a generalist weapon where I can pick it up and kind of run around and skirmish? Or is this a weapon where when I pick it up, I'm going to want to be seeking out specific situations in which I want to use it? So like a good example in Squids would be the assault rifle for humans versus the RPG. So like with the RPG, that is not like a general good combat weapon. You don't want to be running into any old situation when you have an RPG because it takes a long time to aim. You get one shot before you have to reload, and if you miss, you're really exposed. But it's great at taking out, enemy crawler tanks. It's great at taking out specific targets that need to be taken out.
Yeah.
Whereas the assault rifle, it's like, well, I can sort of use this pretty in any situation and kind of adapt to the situation on the fly because it's a very simple, straightforward, and flexible weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that was sort of like, those are two examples of how when I start thinking about what a weapon is in Squids in Space, I kind of start from, well, what is I start from not what the weapon does in terms of like what it fires or exactly what its mechanics are, but like what's the role that this weapon fulfills? Like when a player picks up this weapon, what should they feel like they want to be doing?
Yeah. There was actually, I want to bring this up real quick before Brandon answers his next question, asks his next question, but there was this movie called Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I don't know if anybody in the chat has heard of it, but
I've definitely heard of it, but I've not seen it.
I have a 3-part disc that comes with 3 bad movies. One of them is on there. I'll mail it to you because it is an experience of a movie. You gotta say. Oh man.
Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Yeah, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I'll watch that tonight then. That's on Hulu. I got you.
You gotta watch it, man.
I got
All right, Ben, you can ask your next question there. Sorry for that.
No worries.
Do you hope Squids as it is in the upcoming future of the gaming community? Like, you have Fortnite being Fortnite essentially the biggest game in the community right now. You have Red Dead just came out. CS:GO for
CS:GO's been like an everlasting game, basically. Yeah.
Do you think it'll last its length? That, for example, GTA 5. GTA 5 came out in 2013, and it's 2018. Do you think Squids will last that long? Like periodic updates, like Rockstar does, and for future games down the road?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, if I knew that, if I could answer that for sure, I would be a very wealthy man because I would know what to bet on. But I mean, I would love that. I mean, the reason I got into making games in the first place was because, as a kid growing up with like an NES and an SNES and everything, I love video games, and I want to make a game that people can enjoy, get as much entertainment out of, the same way that I got so much entertainment out of games when I was growing up, So if Squids were to blow up like anything close to Fortnite, like that would basically be a dream come true. Yeah. So like, who knows if that's going to happen? Obviously, it's pretty, like, you need a lot of luck and good timing as well in order to have a game that blows up quite like that.
Yeah.
And, the game needs to be good, too. You look at all the really definitive games of the last 15 years. You've got WoW in 2004, got League of Legends in 2009, and then now you've got Fortnite in, 20... Well, the current incarnation of it was, I think, last year, right? 2017?
Yeah, it came out last July, about.
No. Yeah, but it was that tower defense game. For, like, Fortnite was... This is kind of what I mean by when you say you need a little bit of luck. Fortnite came out, and it was a tower defense game, and it, didn't really do anything, like, in terms of sales. It wasn't doing... And then they saw that PUBG was doing so well and said, let's make it into a battle royale game.
Yeah.
And that formula just worked super well for them. Their game they had the right game at the right time, and it just got super huge.
Yeah, definitely.
If Squids could be that game, that would absolutely be a dream come true. More realistically, I would just love for, all I really want out of Squids, everything else being gravy on top of it, all I really want is for a decent amount of people to be able to play and enjoy the game and just, like, come to our Discord and hang out and say that they like the game. Like, honestly, whenever someone comes into the Discord and is like, man, this game is awesome, it's just like, I don't know. That makes me really, really happy. I know it sounds dumb and like cliche and really obvious, but it's cool because, even now I think of myself more as a game player than a developer still. I don't know. So just being like, you made something that people are enjoying, it's a great feeling.
Oh, yeah, definitely. On the topic of like classic games you were mentioning, like on the SNES and NES, what would you say like would be like your most cherished or most favorite game? Like if you can think of one. Like
the answer. Okay, so I never have a good answer to this because I am bad at organizing things into favorites, but I do have a ready answer for you. It's the answer that I always give when someone asks me what my favorite game is, which is Super Mario 64.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because I just think that you see, you look around today and you see 3D platformers that still don't get core things right that Mario 64 basically got in 1996.
Yeah.
And just speaks volumes to how that game you can pick it up and it can still feel a little bit magical. Obviously, I have extreme nostalgia for that game. I was exactly the right age. I was born in '83, so when it came out with 64, I was in my early teens. So it was like perfect as a kind of sequence from the 2D era into the 3D era.
Definitely. I feel like it was sort of the same way when it came to Mario Sunshine. I don't know if you ever played that one or not, but I feel like
Oh yeah, I played the hell out of Sunshine.
I feel like they try to bring back a lot from Mario 64 into Sunshine a lot of the time.
Definitely, yeah. They clearly wanted to make a game that was building off of 64's successes while also giving it its own identity with like the flood mechanics.
Yeah, definitely. Like the whole level design of it too. Like it was trying to draw away. I feel like the whole style and theme with Mario Sunshine from 64, but its core elements were still there.
Yeah, like the biggest difference I would say between those two games is the size of the levels. Like you look at the size, just like the square footage of the levels in Sunshine compared to 64,
Yeah.
and the Sunshine levels are enormously large. It's kind of a the game is a little bit, in my experience anyway. Obviously, your mileage may vary, but for me, Mario Sunshine played a little bit slower, played a little bit like more thoughtful and exploratory, as opposed to Mario 64, which was very, very like movement, like super movement focused in every single moment, and very like parkour heavy too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of it feels like that is what they're trying to get back to with Odyssey recently.
Oh man, that game was fun.
I'm a huge Odyssey fan. Yeah, I think they nailed it with that game.
Definitely. It's a mix of casual and competitive. Alright, I'll stop talking about Mario for now and let Brandon talk for a bit because we're kind of taking this is turning to the Mario podcast here.
What is your favorite movie? Oldie, new-ish type movie?
Oh man, that's a really hard one. I would say, okay, so I'm going to give a weird answer. I'm going to say probably the movie that affected my personal tastes the most was the 1986 Transformers movie. The animated one.
Oh, I remember that one too. I remember that.
I've never seen that.
You never seen that one, Brandon?
I've not. I've only seen the new, what was it?
Oh,
Probably
man.
2008 animated
Dude,
series.
It's an experience.
And I saw...
I even had, oh, sorry, Brandon.
I saw the Shia LaBeouf garbage movie.
I was just going to say that I actually had the original Optimus Prime that would be in that movie, in toy form.
Oh, nice.
When I was a kid, I played that so much until it broke, and I was so sad that my mom bought me a GameCube.
I bought you a GameCube because your toy broke.
Well, I was
What?
heartbroken. My grandmother gotten me that Optimus Prime, right? And I was so sad that I was scared that she was going to be mad at me. That she had to calm me down by getting, and she talked to my grandmother, and they both, pitched in to get me a GameCube. It's kind of sweet in a way.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, but it's I don't know. I feel like if you don't have nostalgia for 80s Transformers, the 1986 Transformers movie won't do anything for you.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it was definitely a movie that I watched 1,000 times as a young kid.
Definitely.
I'd say other movies that were big influences on me, I guess. I don't know if I would call them necessarily my favorites, but they're definitely super memorable.
Yeah.
Are probably The Matrix. And actually, I recently rewatched that, and it's oh, this movie's still really good. Dark City. Probably the Lord of the Rings movies, because at that point, it seems weird to think about it now, but back when the Lord of the Rings movies came out, we didn't have a lot of geeky movies coming out in theaters very often. Like, it was really cool to get 3 huge movies based on such like a landmark, like geek IP as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. And it came out exactly at the right time for me personally because I was in college. So like our kind of like group of friends in college really like was able to bond and do a lot of talking about the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
And then probably Avengers as well, like the first Avengers, like because the Marvel movies were coming out, and most of them were really good. Some of them were a little more forgettable. And then Avengers comes out, and it's just like, oh my god, I can't believe that worked in a movie, and not only worked, but like was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Just so you know as well, Brandon's never seen Lord of the Rings or Matrix. I gotta call him out on this.
Seen the Matrix. I've seen the Matrix.
Oh, you've seen the Matrix.
I've never watched any of the Lord of the Rings. I attempted like the first 15 minutes when Harry Potter got into the cab, like the little closet under the steps, and then I just couldn't do it.
They're definitely kind of slow, you know, like the books.
Definitely. Like it has
but it's not for everyone.
Take on a few things in the esports. I don't know if you heard about it. Drake is part owner of 100 Thieves now, and then Michael Jordan invested in the Team Liquid esports team. What are your takes on that?
It's pretty rad, honestly. Like it's sort of like a mirror to what I was just talking about with the Marvel thing, where a lot of stuff, you know, with Marvel, a lot of the movies came out and it's like, is this really going to happen? And then it happened. And I feel like it's kind of the same with esports, where esports in the States and in North America in general has been around for like last maybe 5 years in a pretty serious respect, and it's been getting bigger and bigger. And you've been starting to hear rumblings about like sports owners and like actual serious people like with capital willing to starting to invest or think about investing in the esports scene. And like the fact that it's actually happening is still a little bit mind-blowing to me.
Because I know the, like you said, sports, the Cleveland Cavaliers owner is the one that kind of started, was the one that gave Nadeshot the chance to prove himself as an esports owner in the LCS.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like a smart bet now.
Yeah.
And then I know there's teams, I think.
And for PSG, it's time to turn it around. And we've seen
probably just, but I know there's a lot of like NBA and football teams and soccer teams getting esports teams specifically for like Madden, NBA, and FIFA. But I know some of them have major teams as well.
I feel like
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, I was just about to say, it kind of feels very Wild Westy right now, where like everyone knows that there's, or at least the prevailing like thought process is that there's money to be made in esports somehow, but no formula has been set down yet. So everyone's just kind of like trying a bunch of stuff and seeing what works. It's really, really exciting to watch.
Definitely.
I feel like, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, like kind of symphony. It's called Video Games Live, but I feel like it's basically a music version of esports and how it rose up. No one thinking that it would be successful. No one thought it would get anywhere or anything like that. If you look at it now, it's like nerd and pop culture wise, it's one of the biggest events people can go to.
Definitely. You got Comic-Con and everything, but like that's a thing. Like the nerd and geek and video gamer pop culture has taken over more than people like thought. Sports, more than normal sports and stuff like that. Like there's in the last couple of years, but there's talks of this esports coming into the Olympics. This the commissioner said he'll never do it because violence, like it would only probably be sports games and stuff. Had a Call of Duty championship a few years ago, and that's when Call of Duty esports was really, really small. I think that was, but that esports is taking a big step.
Yeah, and like even if the current commissioner of the Olympics like doesn't want to do it, you know, in 20 years there's going to be a different commissioner who's going to be younger probably and more inclined to like understand that an audience wants that type of thing. Not necessarily saying that it's going to happen, but yeah, it's kind of crazy how much gaming and just geek stuff in general is super mainstream right now. Even, you know, 15 years ago, that totally was not the case.
I think Patrick has something he wants to talk about now.
No, I'm just thinking, like, what if it comes to the point that the Olympics becomes nothing but gaming? Like,
yeah, phenomenal. Like you have SSX or something like that for the snowboarding section and skiing section.
It's all just played on Wii Sports.
No. Olympics. That'd be phenomenal.
Alright, I'm going to try to ask this in the most general way possible without causing anything, but there was a certain event that happened on Red Dead Redemption 2 with a certain person feeding another certain person in-game to a certain animal. I don't know if you've heard of any of it, but hopefully with those kind of terms, did you hear anything about that?
Unfortunately, I don't know what you're talking about on this one.
I'll say it.
No, you might get us banned out Twitch. I don't want that right now.
Get banned for this. Hopefully not. Okay. All right. So there was this YouTuber that. All right. So Red Dead Redemption 2. It's 2018, and everything is becoming like. It's becoming. I don't know how to word this honestly. I'll just say it. Essentially, this guy on YouTube, like, dragged feminist on the street in Red Dead Redemption 2.
And
alligator and fed the alligator the feminist. Like,
and here's the other thing that people this is the part where people are getting controversial about is that afterwards YouTube shut down the channel. Because of that very person being killed was what was promoting violence and not everything else.
Back up.
Wait, let me get this straight. So they created a person in game that was supposed to be like a real person and then killed them?
It was a feminist like NPC basically.
Like I guess Red Dead Redemption 2 has like feminist groups in there that stand. I don't know if you've ever played Assassin's Creed, but you have the random like street performers on the side or the announcer guy or whatever in the middle. I guess Red Dead Redemption 2 created something like that, but with feminists and protesters and stuff like that. The ability to where you can lasso someone and just drag them around, and there's apparently alligators that will eat people.
Yeah.
In the game.
And put those two together.
Yeah. Sure. I think I get what you're saying.
But the
I mean, like, it's a complicated question because there's a lot of like shit going on with everything surrounding that stuff. I mean, how political do you want me to get?
I mean, we just wanted to know, like, do you think that they should have banned his Twitter because they banned the channel for the sole purpose of him feeding that feminist and not the fact that he was shooting a whole bunch of other people in game as well, right? The entire game is about you being like a bandit in the Wild West. But until that moment that he fed the woman to the alligator, did his channel get banned? But everything else went fine.
I don't know the details, so I can't say whether it was a good idea or not. But I suspect that if he's making a joke on his channel about tying someone up whose political beliefs he disagrees with, dragging them through the street, and then feeding them to an alligator, probably for the purpose of humiliating and denigrating those beliefs, then he probably has some other comments on his other social media that give some more context to his actions.
Most likely, yeah.
So, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the details, so I can't say one way or the other.
Yeah, fair enough.
But like, it's not that funny as a joke. So like, I don't know if he has. Like, if he has a history of basically being inflammatory, and then he posts that video, and then that video actually causes more, like, a huge comment thread about people being terrible on the internet, then, like, sure. Like, but, again, I don't know the details of the situation, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to say one way or the other, because I don't want to, like, talk about a situation that I don't know a lot about.
We don't want you.
But I will say that it's not funny. So,
Yeah.
like...
Yeah, fair enough. Like, we don't want you saying anything that will get you, like... We don't want you tarnishing the name of Squids, basically. We love that game. We just wanted to know, like, what you think about the situation and all, but I can definitely see the side of it, definitely.
I mean, like, I'm not trying to be PC or, defend...
Definitely not.
Like,
Definitely
I'm just... I literally don't know about the situation or any of the people involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. There was a, the other game right now that's getting pretty popular. There was... What was it? It's not even out yet, but it was... I'm trying to remember the name of it. Fallout 76. Fallout 76. Have you been looking into that game at all?
I've heard a bit about it. I've been kind of buried in Soul Calibur 6 the last couple weeks, so I haven't been keeping up on a lot of other stuff, but I've definitely heard a bit about 76. I know that not everyone is exactly happy with everything that's been announced for it.
Yeah. I mean, at one point I did feel like it was going to be Bethesda stooping down to a battle royale, but the more I look at it, it's just going to be like Elder Scrolls Online, but Fallout, and done right.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could be really cool. Like,
Yeah.
MMOs give a really good sense of shared space and community. Like, that's really good at doing that.
Definitely.
And to me, Fallout always felt like there was room for that world to be a little more filled out. Because, like, it's really, like, the world itself is pretty interesting. But because those games are all single-player games, it always kind of feels like the world revolves around what you're doing, like what your character is doing. Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. A single-player game kind of needs to be like that. But in an MMO, the world itself can kind of become a bit more of a character. And so I think it's kind of interesting to see where they're going to take the Fallout series in terms of like a multiplayer game.
Definitely. I feel like...
Think about...
Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Think about Battle Royale games, because you brought up Fallout Battle Royale. I did hear something about Red Dead Redemption 2 having a Battle Royale as well.
Oh,
and
no.
Something about that, and then there is a new Battle Royale game I want to talk about after I get your guys' take on that.
I think I know which one you're talking about too, Brandon.
I mean, in terms of Battle Royale games, to me, it feels like, a couple minutes ago I was talking about, WoW in 2004 and then League of Legends in 2012 being like the real, like, seminal games of those like mini eras. And after both of those games released, you got a ton of games trying to copy that formula.
Definitely.
And it really feels like the same thing's happening again. Not that people shouldn't be trying to do it, but it's just game developers are always going to gravitate towards a formula that seems to work. It's just less risky, it always feels like.
Like they'll go for what's being played.
Yeah, especially AAA titles that can't really afford to be... They want to be less risky because the games take so much money to make.
Yeah.
I will say that, at least in the previous two times, like, a lot of the MMOs that tried to be the next WoW or MOBAs that tried to be the next League of Legends didn't really work out. So we'll see if there's any difference this time with the Battle Royale games, but it really feels to me like Fortnite has a pretty strong stranglehold on that genre.
Yeah, definitely. There's actually a question I'm wanting to know from a lot of people these days, and that's what do you think will be the next genre, if there's going to be any? Like, right now it seems to be like Battle Royales. Before it was like Minecraft games. Can you think of any kind of prediction that you think the next big thing will be?
I mean, like, that's one of those questions, again, where it's like, if I could give you an answer that I was confident in, I would be a very rich person, because I would just make $1 billion. I will say that character shooters seem to be on the rise, with Overwatch, and then I think Amazon is also planning on releasing a character shooter. I think so. And who knows if that will be big or not, because Overwatch, it feels like Overwatch is starting to wane a little bit, but it was just so huge for a while.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of interest in Overwatch from people that didn't even play it. And I think, like, strong characters and strong IPs where, like, people can really identify with or, like, really like the characters in the game, it provides a really strong emotional hook. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a character shooter in the next, like, 5 years or so blow up really large. Mm-hmm. But what's more likely, I think, is that the next landmark game genre is going to come completely out of nowhere and surprise everyone, because that's what these things always do. VR, I would actually wouldn't be too surprised if something really big came out of there. VR is because like VR has sort of been really in its embryonic stages the last couple of years, but it feels, having actually done some VR development myself, like before I put on.
Oh, it's cool.
Funbits actually made a small little free demo called Help, HALP ! Which you can play. It's free on Steam if anyone wants to play it.
I'm too poor for VR right now, but I'll look into it definitely.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, same. Like, the VR equipment that you can get in your home right now is ludicrously expensive.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. But those prices will go down over time, and I will say, before I put on a VR helmet, I was like, oh my god, this is so gimmicky, like, who cares? And honestly, I put on the helmet, and I was convinced. Like, VR is crazy. It can give you experiences that no other interface can right now.
Definitely.
And all it's waiting for, I feel like, is for the tech to be in a specific place, to be ready, for the price to be in a place where people can actually afford the hardware, and for the killer app that's going to come along and, like, blow everyone's minds with like a new experience that people didn't even know what they wanted. Because that's kind of, when you think about it, all these huge games that got super huge, I mean, they all kind of came out of nowhere, and they all gave players an experience that they didn't even know that they wanted. A polished one. Like, WoW obviously wasn't the first MMO. Yeah. League of Legends wasn't the first MOBA. Fortnite wasn't the first Battle Royale game. But what all three of those games did do is give a really polished experience, or a more polished experience than what had been previously available, an experience that was more accessible in multiple different ways. And basically, all the people that hadn't played those types of genres yet discovered the genre through those games. And for those players is what I'm talking about when I say it gives them an experience that they didn't know what they wanted. Obviously, if you're a Dota player, you always knew that, you liked MOBAs, and you see League of Legends, and you're like, it's a MOBA. Obviously, the term MOBA didn't exist before League of Legends, but you looked at League of Legends and you're like, it's like Dota, cool. I know what that is.
Yeah.
Cool. This game is a little different. There's no, self-team, there's no denial, last hitting, etc., etc.
Exactly.
But as a game that was free, as a game that asked a little less of players in terms of technical knowledge and investment, in terms of being able to play the game, it just ended up being accessible enough, more accessible enough to blow up and be the huge game that it is now.
Exactly.
And same with Fortnite, right? PUBG was around before Fortnite. Fortnite comes along, makes itself accessible in a few different ways. Obviously it's free.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. You can run it on your phone. You can run it on low-end PCs.
Exactly.
And the game is a little simpler than PUBG. And those things all together just make it more accessible, being in the right place, the right time, high accessibility, taking a genre that already has some known things about it, and basically, I don't want to say perfecting it, but doing their own very accessible take on it. It seems to have worked out. So I don't know. Maybe the answer is character shooters. Maybe the answer is something in VR. Maybe some genre that nobody expects, like, who knows, maybe turn-based roguelikes will make a reappearance as the next major genre.
Yeah. I had to say as well that one of the things I have noticed with this whole Fortnite thing with the game itself, it's more like people don't seem to be focusing more on the game now. It's more the focusing on the community around it. Like, if you notice, like, online and media and everything, nobody's actually talking about the game itself, but like either like the people who are playing it, or like something that's related to it, like a meme or something, or like some kind of news article. But it's never about the game itself. Have you picked up on that at all, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a little weird when you think about it, but it also sort of makes sense, because if you look at any successful game, one thing that a game kind of has to do in order to be successful, or at least a byproduct of being successful, is establishing a community. Because once players personally identify as a player of that game, they're more likely to play it more. Yeah. And the best way to identify as a person who plays that game is to be a part of a group or a part of a community that all plays that game and talks about it. And it's easier nowadays than ever to find a community that plays the same games that you do and connect with those people, because it's not just like online forums anymore. You've got like Discord, you've got all sorts of social media platforms and groups. So like when you look at Fortnite, one of the byproducts of that game being so huge is there's a huge amount of people, communities, that know about that game and have like a shared knowledge of that game and can talk to each other about the game without even talking about the gameplay of that game. Yeah,
exactly. I definitely feel like that's can bring a game to its glory. I feel like that's one of the main reasons why Fortnite is so big as it is now. And I'm probably not the first person to say that either.
Yeah, I mean, because one thing that a community will do for your game is, if you have like a group of people that are really invested in your game, they all love it, is that they'll tell other people about it. Word of mouth is still the best form of advertising, because like if you buy an ad or you run an ad and people see the ad, some people will be like, that game looks cool, I'll play it. But most people will be like, it's an ad, I'm being advertised to. They have like a cynical distance to it. But if their friend comes up and tells them, this game rocks, let's play it together, it's more likely to succeed. So having a community that's willing to like tell other people about the game on your behalf is just the best advertising that you can have as a game. And the way that you get that is by, making a good game that people enjoy and fostering that community.
Definitely. I feel like one of the other things one of the games I really wish was more popular than it is a game called Borderlands, and I'm sure a lot of people know what that game is, but I feel like I wish it was a lot more cherished. And that's probably a bit self-centered, or maybe self-minded, I should say. What is there like any sort of games that you wish as well? Like, I don't want to put you on the spot like this, kind of the same kind of question, but is there any sort of games that you feel would be more in the light?
I don't know. I feel like if you had asked me that question maybe 10 years ago, I would say yes. But I guess I would say yes right now, just because I think there are some games that are really, really awesome that I would love to see their creators get more, like, just get more money for, or like be able to get more recognition for. A lot of them are like smaller indie titles, because I feel like the AAA games these days, they're always gonna make their money back or whatever. Well, I guess not always, but
exactly.
I guess one game that I played recently, if I'm talking about AAA titles though, I guess one game that I feel it's weird that I haven't heard more good things about is Prey. I'm like a huge System Shock 2 and like Deus Ex fan.
Yeah.
From way back in the early 2000s. And Prey, I played BioShock when it came out, and BioShock is fun. It's a good game. But they deliberately, and I understand why they did this, they made it a lot simpler than System Shock and System Shock 2 were. which is totally reasonable from a design perspective, but it was definitely a little disappointing to me personally. And Prey comes along, and Prey is basically System Shock 3, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It's really System Shock-like. And I think they did a really good job of capturing what was good about System Shock, but bringing it into a more modern era, because System Shock is a really old game. And, yeah, it's weird to me that after so many years of people jonesing for a System Shock sequel, that I haven't heard more about Prey kind of fulfilling that desire.
Yeah. I feel like that was it was pretty underwhelming of a game, I find. Well, like, in the fact that it didn't rise to what it could have been.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are reasons for that. Maybe it was just the wrong time. You know, the same way that your game can get huge by being the right game at the right time.
Yeah.
Can also just release the wrong game at the wrong time, and even if the game is good, it just won't like catch the way that you might have expected it.
Yeah. I wonder if Bryan, are you back yet?
Yeah, I haven't left yet. I want to get back to. She hasn't called me yet. I want to get back to Squids from Space really quick. Is there anything that you wish you could go back and change, gameplay-wise, like maps, or want to put in from like real-life standpoint, like a New York style, California style map, or something along those lines?
Well, I mean, we're still developing the game, so I don't think I'm at the stage yet where I'm wishing that I can go back and change anything, because we're still changing stuff, still, you know, refining it.
Hey, I'm just
most of the things that I wish I would change about the game are all on the technical end with how we built it. We sort of like never fully did technical pre-pro and architecture on it, so it kind of grew out of a prototype, which is good in some ways because the game grew really organically, and I think that contributes a lot to why, in my opinion, the game is so fun and so accessible. But on the technical end, it can be a bit of a nightmare sometimes because there's a lot of stuff that was not exactly scripted in the best way. Usually it was scripted by me, who, you know, I'm a designer first and kind of like a technical person second. And I'm good at prototyping for sure, but I wouldn't necessarily put myself in charge of the architecture of a game. So with the game growing out of the prototype, there's a lot of stuff that's very like legacy and very crufty that we've had to kind of adapt as we move forward. And so I wish we really took a step back and pre-pro'd from a technical side the whole game. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's fine. I think the game doesn't really suffer in a meaningful way from it. It's more like we suffer. We suffer in the development of it. So I'll take us suffering over the game suffering.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Well,
in terms of urban maps, sorry, just to finish answering Brandon's
question.
In terms of urban maps, we're definitely planning on releasing more maps as we continue to develop the game. We have one map that's in development right now that we're planning on launching along with our actual game launch. And urban maps are like a really obvious place to go in terms of, so the map that we're releasing is not an urban map, but for the future, I do think that urban maps are a really obvious way to go. They're a map that we don't have yet, and they represent some pretty interesting possibilities in terms of vertical space, in terms of like interiors. Like right now, just exteriors. Yeah. With an urban space, with an urban map, you get more chances for doing something interesting with interiors. You could have like elevators that take you to different floors. Like it could be you're in a office building or something like that, and the two sides are at the bottom and the top of the building rather than from side to side. There's always concerns because of our camera, we can't just do any layout that we want, because if we have if we have tall buildings, we don't want the tall building to like obstruct your camera view from certain angles.
That would be a major problem with top downs, I find.
Yeah, so because we're a top-down game, we do have some limitations on what exactly we can do with geometry. So we do have to get creative sometimes, but yeah, I think an urban map it gives some really interesting potential like layouts that we could take advantage of.
Yeah. I think the last question I'm going to ask before we close up for the podcast here is I can sort of see this. I can sort of see like a Steam workshop being opened for Squids from Space, like people designing certain weapons for the game or certain maps. Do you ever feel like you would move the game in that direction of having it open to like the community to create their own sort of styles for the game?
It's a really cool idea. Like, user-generated content is a huge like community building thing because people love to create and people love to contribute to things that they like. So when you have a game that people like and then they can actually build things and contribute to it, it like really helps build the community. That said, getting our game ready for that would be like an enormous time investment for us. So it's not something that we're currently building, but it's also not something that we're opposed to like seriously considering if the community ends up being in a space where that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a non-answer. Like, I guess the
oh no, it's perfect. It was a good answer. I find it quite satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, like the straightforward answer is we don't have it right now. Right now, there's no plans for it.
Yeah.
But like the idea of it is really cool, and if it makes sense, we would definitely not be opposed to like seriously considering it. We just need to, we're a really small team. There's only like 8 of us basically, so we have to be really efficient with how we spend our time. So we have to really strongly consider the pros and cons whenever we take on a new feature. And, user-generated content is a really, really in-depth, huge feature that would need to make sure that we could even handle with our current team size before we started work on it.
Yeah. I can see what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense. I think other than that, I don't think... Do you have anything you want to ask, Brandon, before we close up? Or is there anything you wanted to add?
Not that I can think of, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, before we end this, is there anything you want to shout out? Is there anything you want to say? Is there anything you want to just let the audience know out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give Squids from Space a plug. For those who don't know, for those who are listening and don't know, Squids from Space is a team versus team top-down shooter. So it's aliens versus humans. Like, the aliens are basically invading Earth, trying to scoop up everything that they can so that they can convert it into fuel for their, like, giant space armada. And the humans are trying to, like, defend Earth and scoop everything up and get it away from the aliens. So it's both a game where you're trying to accomplish whatever the objective of the map is. Some maps are you want to capture the enemy leader. Some maps you want to control objective zones. Yeah. But there's always the secondary objective of collecting resources and leveling up your team. So it's a bit RTS-y in addition to being like a top-down shooter. We're on Steam. We're pretty cheap. I think we have a sale going on right now, although I'm not sure if the sale will still be going on when the podcast is aired. But we do community events 3 times a week where the community all gets together and plays a few games. I personally feel like the game is super fun, very easy to get into. I would say that when we put the game in front of people, more often than not, they tend to like it. Obviously, I'm biased, but it would be super awesome if you're a person that likes top-down shooters, that likes chaotic, fast-paced games, that likes games that don't necessarily take themselves too seriously, where some really funny stuff can happen sometimes, like you get blasted by a giant plasma ball and you go flying like 50 feet, or you're on the moon and using air vents to hop around while shooting a shoulder-mounted cannon at aliens. If that sounds like your type of game, check us out on Steam. Join our Discord. We've got a really awesome community. The devs are pretty active on our Discord, and we'd love to have you.
Well, I think me and Brandon here would personally like to thank you for coming on the podcast. I definitely enjoyed my time with you here. It was really fun talking with you. and I really look forward to seeing what this game has to offer for us as an audience and customers. All right, to the audience out there, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a good day.